Thanking case study. She'd rather talk to plants. Attribute, grateful. Saying, everyone can thank. Action step. Assign board thankers to specific donors to deepen their relationship to your cause. The executive director of the Keeley Arboretum of Greenland College was dismayed. She'd had to cancel their 75th anniversary gala. Why? Because her own board wasn't willing to buy a $75 ticket. This was worrying. The gala was to kick off the Arboretum's $3 million capital campaign for a new education center and greenhouse. The board had been actively engaged in planning the center. There was no question that it was needed. Most Arboretum volunteers were over 60 years old, many in their 80s. They worked in a leaky, old, badly constructed Quonset hut. It had no heat or air conditioning. They froze in the winter and sweltered in Philadelphia's steamy summers. The old building could neither overwinter plants nor start young ones. Volunteers had no place to store their tools. Consequently, they were often lost and had to be replaced. There wasn't even a place for the Arboretum's hands-on classes. These were, of necessity, wet and dirty. People who like to garden are often aesthetically sensitive. They are patient, far-thinking, and gentle. Quite often, they are also introverts. One told me she'd rather talk to plants than to people. The Arboretum's board consisted mostly of retired administrators and academics, not corporate movers and shakers. We began their fundraising makeover with thanking. They ended up raising more than $3 million for their gorgeous, new, fully endowed education center and greenhouse. Here's how it worked. We distributed a list of recent donors at the April board meeting. Board members chose those they knew. Then I took them through an exercise. I asked them to recall a personally meaningful Arboretum experience, preferably something sensory. Then they wrote their thank you notes, referring to that memorable experience. There were some donors no one knew. These names were distributed to those with fewer thanking assignments. Board member Zofia got a $150 donor named Dan. Her thank you note mentioned a stroll through the lilac collection. As she inhaled their unforgettable fragrance, she was enfolded in a sudden flurry of purple and white blossoms. Fast forward to the Arboretum's fall plant sale. This event raises more than $100,000 for the Arboretum. Dan came to the donor preview the night before the sale opened to the public. Sophia stood next to the check-in table. When he arrived, she introduced herself and thanked him again for his gift. He asked, "Hey, are you the lilac lady?" Tickled, she confessed she was, and asked if he was looking for anything special. Dan said yes. He had just moved to the area and bought a historic farmhouse on 3 acres. He admitted he had no idea what to do with it. Sophia asked about the sun, soil, and grading of his property. She guided him expertly through the plants on offer. After serious consultation, Dan purchased thousands of dollars worth of plants. Sophia was in her element, Dan was grateful, and each felt they'd made a new friend. 2 months later, the Arboretum was sending out its annual appeal. Sophia added her personal note to Dan's official request letter. She asked after his garden, warning him against over-pruning. She reminded him when to plant his bulbs and ended with fond good wishes. Sophia wrote her name over the return address of his envelope, increasing the chances that Dan would open it. Remember, his first gift had been $150. A week later, Dan sent the Arboretum a check for $1,500. He gave partly because it was Sophia who asked, and partly because he'd come to understand and value the Arboretum's mission through her. Sophia became a more willing member of the Capital Campaign Committee once she realized how gentle and congenial fundraising could be. She knew $1,500 gifts from people like Dan wouldn't be enough to raise the millions they needed for the new facility. But thanking allowed Sophia and other board members to engage in the fundraising process. It lessened their fear. They realized they could help in ways that played to their strengths and inspired gratitude in donors. When one volunteer's connections led to a challenge grant, they started believing that the dreamed-of center would become a reality. This confidence moved a longtime member who had never given more than $1,000 to donate $500,000. That lead gift ensured the campaign's success. As the French proverb says, gratitude is the memory of the heart.